Project 2025, the 900-page mandate for leadership, part 14. Intelligence is the torch of wisdom. When I start something, Adriane Mayes, you have to finish it. If it's politics, if it's education, if it's anything, if it's getting to the end of the block in a foot race, Adriane Mayes wants to win. As being a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, national headquarters in Delta Sigma Theta is a private, not-for-profit organization whose purpose is to provide assistance and support through established programs in local communities throughout the world. So being a proud member of this amazing sorority and reading the Project 2025 and getting some of the comments that I received over the last couple of days, I want to say thank you so much for all of the support. And the key thing with censorship, when you try to get someone to not speak on what you want to talk about or to expound information, that happens a lot, when you don't know something going on. So what we happen to do in social media is we start actually listening to the media sources. So when we have the presidential transition project 2025, and we're looking at this new administration for a mandate for leadership, the key thing to use my platform, I'm just a vessel of God's work. And so in using the platform of providing the information that is out there written in black and white, if you go to Project 2025, you have an opportunity to see what is in store well, Donald Trump says that he doesn't know anything about this document, but it's within the document that 30% of this information was in his platform as well. So you can check out my page, the last 13 chapters, and I'm reading this out loud, honestly, as a random act of kindness. CCC Because We Care Foundation, my foundation, is celebrating 15 years in the community, myself and my sorority sister, Delta sorority sister, and angel, Enika Gaines. Thank God. And so we are, thank God for my angel. So Enika Gaines and Adriane Mayes, we're celebrating 15 years at CCC Because We Care Foundation, helping the community with acts of kindness, wealth creation, travel experiences, health and wellness, literally AI marketing education, and winning in 2024, building the billionaire journey. And it starts within. The mindset is where it all begins. So when you look at a Project 2025 and they have the policy, and you go to the website and they give you the policy agenda for the mandate for leadership, and they tell you about the presidential personnel database where you can be considered for positions, and you can actually go to the training and receive training in the Presidential Administration Academy, preparing political appointees to be ready on day one. And then you have the playbook. You have the 180 playbook, the 180-day playbook. And that's the plan that we're reading here today, which is the fourth pillar, it states, of Project 2025 is this playbook, and it's the conservative promise. So it's over 900 pages. Right now, we're on page 682 of 922, over 70% done. So we're going to go ahead and hammer it through because, again, the key thing with education, I'm just a vessel. And the great thing is, you'll have naysayers, you have family, you have friends, you have sorority sisters, you have anybody that will literally tell you not what to do, what not to do. But Adriane Mayes is different. I think different. I'm bespoke. And it's okay. I understand now that that's something that a lot of people are intimidated by. But okay, I can't do anything about that. But what I can do is keep going because that's the only thing I do know. So the blessing is at the end of the actual line, getting to the finish line. And I'm so excited to read this actual project playbook, honestly, for different reasons. Initially, it was just for, the Michigan illiteracy rate, it being one of the highest in the nation. But also in Detroit, Michigan, it's 47%. What up, though? And being a product of Detroit, Michigan, one product, educate, we're dope. But sometimes people might need a little assistance. So give people a little grace. Some people might not have the information, are able to read. In fact, like I said, I just gave you the percentages. So 47% is illiterate in the city of Detroit. So we want to make sure we provide the education. And like I said, I say God tapped me on my shoulder, but I'll just say 44 years of experience of being who who Adriane Mayes is. And I was just checking out Detroit Renaissance High School. Ponce Lemire went to high school with class of '96 through a what's it called, a barbecue this past Memorial Independence Day weekend, and a lot of Renaissance people came out and looking at the pictures and everything. I'm gonna get to one, bro. But the key thing is community, like minds coming together for a common cause. So when you come together for this cause of reading with Adriane Mayes, have an open mind, because this mandate for leadership, it's a lot. And, like I said, we're on page 682 of 922. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. And thank you so much for all of the supports and along the way, and the naysayers as well, because both ways, both comments help and help me grow in regards to being better, to see how I can help more people. Because again, my purpose, Adriane Mayes, is for love and service and random acts of kindness. That's what I live for. And I'm continue to do so. And it might not be for everybody, but it's going to be for those that listen. All right, so let's jump in. Mandate for Leadership, Project 2025. We're on page 682 out of 922 for the download, page 649. This problem is most pronounced and we're talking about Department of Veterans Affairs. This problem is most pronounced in the disability claims process, which needs more and better management attention focused on streamlining the procedures, timeliness of claim adjudication, and benefits delivery. Veterans want the VBA to provide timely responses to requests for benefit support, render empathetic customer service, and understandable explanation of those benefits, and deliver those benefits without frustrating delays, weeks, not months. Identify performance targets for benefits. Report publicly on actual performance each quarter, and use these metrics to drive consistent improvement. Develop a new pilot, Express 30, commitment for a veteran's first fully developed disability compensation claim, and organize the VBA to complete the first claim in 30 days. Hire more private companies to perform disability medical examinations. Delays in completing the examinations could be eliminated with more external capacity. Increase automation. Hiring additional staff to process claims is costly, is inflexible, and has yielded mixed results. Attempting to change laws and regulations simply to adjudicate claims will be a Herculean effort, given their complexity. The best way to provide benefits faster and more accurately is by using technology to perform most of the work. Technology can currently exist in the private sector, but the VBA lacks the expertise to use it. This will be more of an organizational challenge than a technology hurdle. Reduce improper payment and fraud. About $500 million is improperly paid out each year. Better tools, training, and management could reduce this substantially, but rule changes at the department level would be needed. Budget. The VA's schedule for rating disabilities, VASRD, has assigned disability ratings to a growing number of health conditions over time. Some are tenuously related or wholly unrelated to military service. The further growth in presumptive service-connected medical conditions pursued by Congress and veteran service organizations, begun with Agent Orange and most recently for burn pits, airborne toxins, has led to historic increases in mandatory VBA spending in recent years. The VA has a time-phased plan to reassess the VASRD and its ratings for compensation. But this internal process can be slow and laborious, requires Office of Management and Budget, OMB, approvals, and can become politically charged both in Congress and with VSOs. The next administration should explore how VASRD reviews could be accelerated with clearance from OMB to target significant cost savings from revising disability rating awards for future claimants while preserving them fully or partially for existing claimants. The VBA's information technology top-line budget should be re-examined and reassessed in light of the need for expanded automation across the enterprise. Traditionally, VHA captures the large majority of VA IT funding. The VBA needs to make the case for a larger IT budget with clear requirements to support that request. Personnel. Pursue reforms of the human capital management process and operations within the VBA to build a more blended workforce with more contractors to process claims. This would free federal employees to perform other duties and be involved solely with the final decision to award benefits. To improve, improve the VBA acquisition force. The VBA needs more world-class contractor support. Currently, few of the top companies have contracts with the VBA, and the VBA needs to conduct more outreach to the private sector through senior leader engagement and industry conferences. To identify more effective and efficient ways to complete claims, establish a knowledge exchange program with top-tier private sector companies that do similar work. The VBA is fundamentally a financial services organization. A significant amount of its work has a private sector analog that could be leveraged to improve service to veterans. For most of its existence, the VBA has been a risk-averse, insular, paper-based organization, implementing technology only over the past decade. This insularity has led to a predominantly build it ourselves approach, partly because VBA staff has limited experience or insight into current private sector tools and methods, and partly because the VBA struggles to compete with the VHA for IT funding. Senior executive leadership needs more innovators and trailblazers, qualities that have sometimes been lacking in the VBA senior ranks. Recruiting a more relevant, knowledgeable, and technological savvy team, along with robust political control of the VA, could bring about better solutions to the VBA's workflow challenges. Human Resources and Administration, HRA, needed reforms. Rescind all delegations of authority promulgated by the VA under the prior administration. Transfer all career SES out of PAS designated positions on the first day, and ensure political control of the VA. Take a close and analytically critical look at where hybrid and remote work is a net positive as a functional necessity, and where in-person collaboration and presence will help to instill a strong work ethic and a more cohesive environment for productivity from the Office of the Secretary across the headquarters enterprise. The COVID-19 pandemic spurred a significant shift to hybrid and telework options for large segments of the staff in the Washington headquarters, in its satellites, and at some VBA regional offices. The remote work expectation has been amplified and formalized within the Biden administration team at VA to the extent that the current secretary, deputy secretary, and their staffs are not in office as a matter of a routine presence, while VA staff in Washington, D.C. have limited in-person meetings, relying more frequently on video conference calls. The short-term and long-term effects of this policy on the department are unknown, but generally the policy may be undermining the cohesiveness and competencies of some staff and functions, and diluting general organizational accountability and responsiveness. Budget. Expedite the acquisition of a new human resources information technology, HRIT system. The current system is not user-friendly, has minimal fusion, middleware capacity, and is not conducive to data-driven personnel decisions. Personnel data needs to be organized and managed to its full potential. The HRIT system, associated databases, and other shadow personnel systems have no shortage of data. The problem comes with effective management of the data. Broaden pay and benefits in critical VA skill sets beyond medical care occupations. To be more competitive with private sector industry, IT, acquisition, cyber, and economics are some examples of skill sets that are difficult for the VA to recruit, largely because of the limitations of federal pay scales. Continue to maximize the use of new VA hiring and pay authorities provided by Congress in the RAISE Act and PACT Act, as well as existing authorities in student loan forgiveness and the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Personnel. Foster a culture that is mission, veteran-driven, alert, engaged, and habitually responsive to the veteran, and structure an environment that promotes a flexible and agile workplace. Increase employee satisfaction. experience to improve recruitment and retention of VA personnel. Go beyond the traditional focus on the intrinsic monetary pay and bonuses, and seek creative ways to instill teamwork, loyalty, and pride. Train members and manager, Train leaders and managers to promote an energized and productive workplace culture and reward those who do it well. Ensure that senior leaders, SES, set the proper example. Focus more attention on hiring veterans and military spouses. The percentage of veterans employed at VA has been declining. Support the White House Office of Presidential Personnel, PPO, in identifying a fully vetted roster of candidates to assume all key positions at VA well ahead of formal nominations. The VA is the second largest federal agency, yet it has authorized a woefully small number of PAS positions when compared to other agencies of lesser size. Congress and the Office of Personnel Management should be engaged on ways to provide authorities for a higher number of non-career PA positions. The White House PPO can be inclined to discount the VA's importance, but given the political attention that VA can generate for Congress and the media, PPO should understand the importance of finding some talented political appointees to serve at VA. Increase the number and utilization of limited term appointment senior executive service positions for up to 3 years to work on special projects to ensure talent refreshment, talent acquisition, and flexibility. Manage the relationship with organized labor effectively and proactively. Number one, ensure that any agenda that includes labor civil service reform in the VA has a clear direction from the secretarial level, support from the general counsel, alignment with the assistant secretary for human resources and administration, and a unified and strong political will to carry it out. Without those elements, labor reforms are very difficult to accomplish. Number two, ensure that each senior leader in the process gets buy-in from reform-minded career employees willing to accept and to support change. Those mid-level and senior level managers exist, but they will need to be identified early and shown trust and confidence. Number three, ensure that the White House communicates the labor reform agenda swiftly. Trump administration executive orders on civil service reform, official time, government furnished office space, were issued too late, and departments and agencies were not prepared to execute them. Number four, anticipate the inevitable opportunities for legal challenges from organized labor and be prepared for them to happen and be dragged out, which makes early, decisive timing all the more important. Number five, ensure that the White House is prepared to support a concerted and deliberate effort on implementation to avoid perceptions of a disconnected strategy and disaggregated effort. And number six, remain mindful of which labor contracts end, when they end, and what the agenda's goal for renegotiation are. If not done effectively, contract end dates will be missed or lack notification. It is therefore essential to have a clear strategy with respect to what leadership wants from a new contract. Do not make the perfect the enemy of the good in contract negotiations. Work with Congress to sunset the Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection, OAWP. OAWP was well-intentioned when formed, but it is redundant with the activities of supervisors as well as Equal Employment Opportunity, Office of the Inspector General, Office of Special Counsel, and other policies, programs, and procedures for holding employees accountable. This redundancy results in lengthy investigations, gaps in coverage, and an overall ineffective method of employee and supervisor accountability. Consider decoupling HRA and the Office of Security and Preparedness, OSP. When Congress directed that the OAP be established, it did not include authorities for a new assistant secretary position. Consequently, the OSP was combined with HRA to free a PAS position. The functions of HRA and OSP are dissimilar and thus create an organization that is difficult to staff with the talent needed to execute both missions effectively. Okay, author's note. The preparation of this chapter was a collective enterprise of individuals involved in the 2025 presidential transition project. All contributors to this chapter are listed in the front of this volume, but Darren Selrick, Paul R. Lawrence, and Christopher Anderson deserve special attention. The author alone assumes responsibility for the content of this chapter, and no views expressed herein should be attributed to any other individual. Okay, so that is the completion of that chapter. Moving right along, I was just thinking this morning about my mother. My mother always told me, "Don't stop doing what you're doing, Adriane Mayes. Continue to give." And I woke up this morning thinking about what she shared to me, and I was like, "God has me giving on a global scale." So Nancy Mays, I hope you're making you proud. So, Section 4, the economy. The next administration must prioritize the economic prosperity of ordinary Americans. For several decades, establishment elites have failed the citizenry by refusing to secure the border, outsourcing manufacturing to China and elsewhere, spending recklessly, regulating constantly, and generally controlling the country from the top down rather than letting it flourish from the bottom up. The proper role of government, as was articulated nearly 250 years ago, is to secure our God given unalienable rights in order that we might enjoy the pursuit of happiness, the benefits of free enterprise, and the blessings of liberty. Finding the right approach to the trade policy is key to the fortunes of everyday Americans. In Chapter 26, President of the Competitive Enterprise Institute, Kent Lastman, and former White House Director of Trade and Manufacturing Policy, Peter Navarro, debate what an effective conservative trade policy would look like. Lastman argues that the best trade policy is a humble, limited government approach that would encourage free trade with all nations. He maintains that aggressive trade policies involve an increased government role that future leftist administrations would utilize to push climate change and equity-based activism. Focusing more on gross domestic product, GDP, growth than on median income, he writes that people mistakenly believe that US manufacturing and the US economy are in decline, when in truth, American manufacturing output is currently at an all-time high. Meanwhile, we continue to experience record-setting real GDP despite our long-run decline in manufacturing employment. Lastman does not think that an aggressive US trade policy would lead to more manufacturing jobs. Rather, he writes, Federal Reserve research shows that the Trump administration's steel tariffs and the retaliatory tariffs levied by other nations in response have cost about 75,000 manufacturing jobs while creating only about 1,000 jobs in the steel industry. Furthermore, he writes that protectionism and similar progressive policies tend to weaken American security. Lastman maintains that trade creates peace, and if China weren't so reliant upon trade with the US, it would be much more unstable and dangerous. He thinks American influence in China, internet memes, fashion movies, can play a vital role in helping to turn China from an authoritarian threat into a freer and less hostile power. Ultimately, Lastman believes that we should lower or repeal tariffs, including eliminating the destructive Trump-Biden tariffs, in order to make goods more affordable for Americans. He thinks free trade will improve our economy, enhance our national security, and keep future left-leaning Congresses from insisting that future left-leaning presidents negotiate for as many trade unrelated provisions as possible to benefit labor and green constituencies. Navarro disagrees with Lastman. Don't let that one go. Navarro disagrees with Lastman almost across the board. He writes, trade policy can and must play an essential role in an American manufacturing and defense industrial base renaissance, which he says is crucial to our country's future. But two forces in particular are pushing America in the opposite direction. First, the World Trade Organization, WTO, most favored nation, rules encourage our trade partners to adopt high tariffs, which lead to our chronic trade deficits and make us the globe's biggest trade loser and victim of unfair, unbalanced, and non reciprocal trade. For example, Navarro writes tariffs on imported automobiles are 2.5% in the US, 10% in the European Union, and 15% in China. Second, China's economic aggression in the form of tariffs, non-tariff barriers, dumping, counterfeiting, and piracy, and currency manipulation further weakens our manufacturing and defense industrial base, even as the fragility of global dispersed supply chains has been brought into sharp relief by the COVID-19 pandemic. In contrast to Lastman, Navarro thinks that trade deficits matter a great deal. He writes that offshoring not only suppresses the real wages of American blue collar workers and denies millions of Americans the opportunity to climb up the rungs of the ladder to the middle class, but it also raises the specter of a manufacturing and defense industrial base that, unlike our experience in World Wars One and Two, will not be able to provide the weapons and material that will be needed should America enter another major world war. Also, China controls much of the world's pharmaceutical production and supply chains. It is therefore essential, he writes, that our trade policies be guided by the principle of reciprocity, whereby we coax other countries into lowering their trade barriers, if possible, and raise ours as necessary. Moreover, he says we should decouple our economy from China's. China's goal, Navarro says, is to shift the world's manufacturing and supply chains to its soil, thereby strengthening its defense industrial base and associated warfighting capabilities. He writes every year more than 300,000 communist Chinese nationals attend US universities or are hired at US national laboratories, innovation centers, incubators, and think tanks. Huawei, an instrument of Chinese military espionage, is now partnering with UC Berkeley on research with important future military applications. China is also engaged in what Warren Buffett calls conquest by purchase, as it uses revenues from its trade surpluses to buy American real estate, companies, and financial assets. In sum, Navarro believes our current trade policy enriches our allies and adversaries while hurting us, weakens our industrial base while strengthening China's, and shortchanges Main Street manufacturers and workers. Such non reciprocal free trade is slowly undermining our capabilities and our freedom. A small component of trade policy involves the Export Import Bank, and Jennifer Hazelton and Veronique de Rugby debate its merits in Chapter 23. In support of the bank, Hazelton writes, EXIM provides financing only when the private sector will not. She says export credit is a strategy weapon in China's whole of government approach to enhance its global power. China, China provided an estimated $500 billion in export credit. In 2018, approaching in that 1 year, the total amount of financing EXIM has provided in its 90-year history. Hazelton argues that when large American companies can get a loan from EXIM rather than having to meet the demands of export credit agencies in Europe or elsewhere, it helps American small businesses too. She writes that the US would be foolish to abandon this field of play. Opposing the bank, the Rugby writes, EXIM operates in effect as a protectionist agency that picks winners and losers in the market by providing political privileges to firms that are already well financed. She denies it promotes exports and argues it hurts small businesses, which often have to compete against large businesses that are able to get the loans. She writes that it also helps foreign companies, such as state-run China Air, that buys U.S. airport exports from American companies such as Boeing. The bottom line, she says, is that the bank should be abolished. In Chapter 21, Former Assistant Secretary of Commerce Thomas F. Gilman describes the Department of Commerce as dominated by career staff who are uninterested in implementing the president's priorities. The department clearly needs far more political leadership, including at the Census Bureau, as Gilman notes. The Census Bureau, unlike much of the federal government, has a constitutionally required mission, yet the 2020 census was at least somewhat compromised by overly risk-averse COVID policies that prevented census field representatives from going door to door for much of that year. The Census Bureau's website, one of the worst in the federal government, buries crucial statistics where only academics or advocates are likely to find them. In addition, Gilman writes that a new administration should ensure that the Bureau of Economic Affairs also house that Commerce conducts a statistical analysis in a consistent and objective manner. Moreover, the International Trade Administration, which is centrally placed to craft and implement U.S. trade policies, should counter the malign influence of China and other U.S. adversaries and strongly defend against trade violations. In Chapter 22, William L. Walton, Stephen Moore, and David R. Burton note that under the Biden administration, the Treasury Department has failed to achieve any of the agency's core objectives. Under the leadership of Secretary Janet Yellen, Treasury has placed equity and climate change among its top 5 priorities. The next administration must act decisively to curtail activities that fall outside of Treasury's mandate and primary mission. Treasury must refocus on its core mission of promoting economic growth, prosperity, and economic stability. The authors add that Treasury should make balancing the federal budget a mission-critical objective. The authors propose legislation to reform the tax code, writing, "Tax policy has a powerful impact on the economy. The Treasury Department should develop and promote tax reform legislation that will promote prosperity. To accomplish this, tax reform should improve incentives to work, save, and invest. This, in turn, is accomplished primarily by reducing marginal tax rates, reducing the cost of capital, and broadening the tax base to eliminate tax-induced economic distortions by eliminating special interest tax credits, deductions, and exclusions. Tax compliance costs will decline perceptually if the tax system is substantially simplified. The Treasury Department should also promote tax competition rather than supporting an international tax cartel." Chapter 22 includes proposals to reduce the intrusiveness and increase the accountability of the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. The chapter also explains how the Interagency Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS, chaired by Treasury, should realign its priorities to meet the United States' current policy threats, especially from China. It explains how Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which it manages the anti-money laundering, countering the financing of terrorism, AML-CFT programs, can be improved to reduce the burden on small firms and improve the effectiveness of the AML-CFT regime. In Chapter 25, Karen Kerrigan describes the Small Business Administration, SBA, as a sprawling, unaccountable agency, replete with waste, fraud, and mismanagement, and guilty of mission creep. Moreover, its initiatives aimed at inclusivity are in fact creating exclusivity and stringent selectivity in deciding what types of small businesses and entities can use SBA programs. According to Kerrigan, the Office of Advocacy is one of bright spots within the SBA that a conservative administration could supercharge to dismantle extreme regulatory policies and advance limited government reforms that promote economic freedom and opportunity. She recommends that it receive a big increase in funding and staffing, and then undertake a research agenda that includes measuring the total cost that federal regulation imposes on small businesses. This will be one important step in making sure that the SBA, under a conservative administration, would meet the needs of America's small business owners and entrepreneurs, not special interests. Former White House Director of the Domestic Policy Council, Paul Winfrey, writes in chapter 24 that the Federal Reserve actually causes inflationary and recessionary cycles. He says a core problem with government control of monetary policy is its exposure to two unavoidable political pressures: pressure to print money to subsidize government deficits, and pressure to print money to boost the economy artificially until the next election. The Fed has also added a moral hazard due to its history of bailing out private firms when they engage in excess speculation. At a minimum, Winfrey writes, full employment should be eliminated from the Federal Reserve's mandate, requiring it to focus on price stability alone. The Fed should not be allowed to incorporate environmental, social, and governance factors into its mandate. It should be compelled to specify its target range for inflation. Its last resort lending practices, which are directly responsible for too big to fail, should be curbed. Its mission and alternatives to the Fed should be explored by a commission created for that purpose, and a central bank digital currency, which would provide unprecedented surveillance and potential control of financial transactions, should be rejected. Even more ambitiously, Winfrey suggests that the next administration should think about proposing legislation that would effectively abolish the Federal Reserve and replace it with free banking, whereby neither interest rates nor the supply of money will be controlled by government. Free banking would produce a stable and sound currency and a strong financial system, while allowing lending to flourish. Alternatively, Winfrey writes the next administration should consider the feasibility of a return to the gold standard. So we're on page 661 on the PDF, 694 out of 922. Okay, jumping into chapter 21, Department of Commerce, Thomas F. Gilman. Talking to a fellow business owner here, possible sponsor of Random Acts of Kindness. Okay. Department of Commerce, Thomas F. Gilman. The Department of Commerce is charged with promoting economic growth, innovation, and competitiveness while providing the data that American businesses need to succeed. Intended to serve with clarity of purpose as the voice of business in any cabinet's cabinet, the Department of Commerce has suffered from decades of regulatory capture, ideological drift, and lack of focus. One long-standing joke maintains that the department, with its lack of coherence, is a holding company for the parts of the federal government that could not be housed elsewhere. Thus, in the 1990s, calls emerged to abolish the department and either spin off, zero out, or consolidate its functions among other entities. At the same time, the department has a higher profile now than perhaps ever in its history. It possesses key tools to address decades of poor decision making in Washington and is central to any plan to reserve the precipitous economic decline sparked by the Biden administration and to counter communist China programs and authorities that will be crucial to the success of a conservative presidency, and that its role in the federal bureaucracy will benefit from streamlining and reform. Many programs at the Department of Commerce overlap in whole or part with other governmental programs, and consolidating all and streamlining these could increase both accountability and return on taxpayer investment. Any exercise in government-wide budgeting and reform should review the department with an eye toward consolidation, elimination, or privatization that examines the efficiency, effectiveness, and underlying philosophy of each individual component. Though not an exhaustive set of proposals, the next conservative president should consider whether the International Trade Administration, ITA, and parts of the Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, should be streamlined and moved to the Office of the United States Trade Representative, USTR, along with the Development Finance Corporation, the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, the Export Import Bank, and other trade related programs spread across the federal government, as well as considering whether many of these programs should exist within the federal government. The Economic Development Administration's grant programs, which are among a broad set of duplicative and overlapping federal economic development grant programs, should be consolidated with other programs and or eliminated. The Bureau of Economic Analysis and Census Bureau, as well as the Department of Labor's Bureau of Labor Statistics, should be consolidated into a more manageable, focused, and efficient statistical agency. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, USPTO, should be made into a performance-based organization under the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. Alternatively, the USPTO should be consolidated with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, in a new U.S. Office of Patents, Trademarks, and Standards, with all non-mission critical research functions eliminated or moved to other more focused federal agencies, and the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, should be dismantled and many of its functions eliminated, sent to other agencies, privatized, or placed under the control of states and territories. Almost every element of the department can be viewed through this lens, but with today's political reality and multiple competing congressional committee jurisdictions, drastic structural change to the department is neither imminent nor likely. Thus, this chapter largely accepts the baseline of today's department and proposes a bold but achievable set of proposals for an incoming conservative administration. Whatever the imperfections of the Department of Commerce, it is blessed with many quality civil servants and strong statutory authorities that, directed properly, can help ensure U.S. success in 2025 and beyond. With that in mind, this chapter focuses primarily on policy, strategy, and occasionally tactics that are either immediately implementable under strong leadership or are critical to mission success. Office of the Secretary. The Office of the Secretary is somewhat of a misnomer, as very few of the thousands of employees working in the office are dedicated to staffing the Secretary and implementing administration priorities. Rather, OS's budget and full-time equivalents have increasingly been allocated to fulfill financial, human resources, administrative, information technology, contracting, and facilities functions using outdated and inefficient systems. The Trump administration began implementing key changes, such as updating financial management tools, but more must be done to digitize and modernize the department's process to free resources for secretarial and presidential priorities. The above drain on resources leaves the Secretary of Commerce to rely upon a few dozen direct support staff, supplemented with detailees and indirect funding from each of the bureaus to execute the president's agenda and manage the diverse functions of the department. This structure empowers career staff in each bureau and makes it harder to mandate change. As such, it is vitally important that an incoming administration fully staff OS with political appointees send all existing detail leads back to their home bureaus on day one and replace those detail leads with trusted and knowledgeable career staff on an as needed basis. Department of Commerce leadership should also fight to restore direct funding and additional political appointee positions to OS and its constituents parts involved in implementing and communicating the Commerce Secretary's and President's policy priorities. Administration, budget, and appropriations. Recent practice has been for career staff to serve as gatekeepers between department leadership and external budget and appropriations partners at the OMB and on Capitol Hill. By serving not just as a central point of contact, but as the sole staff level communicators of departmental priorities, these career officials can, have, and will slow down and even stop changes in policy, even at the line office level. Although the following is true at all agencies, It is particularly important at the Department of Commerce that political leadership be immediately installed at the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, CFO, and Assistant Secretary for Administration, ASA, and that political appointees receive a mandate to communicate with external partners alongside career staff at every stage of the budget and appropriations process. Political appointees must also monitor internal CFO operations down to the operating division level to ensure that funds are not being diverted to programs that do not align with administration priorities, as has regularly happened in years past. Advisory committees. Due to the nature of the Department of Commerce's portfolio, many of the advisory committees are populated by activists from organizations openly hostile to conservative principals who use the committees to impede conservative policy. Upon entering office, all such committees should be reviewed regarding whether they are required by statute and abolished if they are not. Membership of the remaining committees should be reconstituted to ensure they are sources of genuine expert advice and productive contributions to the policymaking process. Federal Advisory Committee Act, FACA, compliance and awareness of any ways the committees have been written into regulation should be considered. International Trade Administration. The International Trade Administration is centrally placed to craft and implement U.S. trade policy. Core to ITA's mission is the expansion of trade and investment and the fostering of job creation, innovation, and economic growth, while also providing research and analysis that support USTR's trade negotiations. ITA carries out this mission on behalf of American workers, ranchers, and families. As discussed elsewhere, historically, conservatives have argued that many federal government trade and investment-oriented functions amount to corporate welfare or protectionism. There is a growing counter-argument within the conservative movement, contending that in a world in which managed trade is the norm rather than the exception, and in which authoritarian governments, especially China, continually seek to undermine U.S. interests, the U.S. cannot unilaterally disarm. To do so would harm the cause of free trade in the long term, and in any event, Congress is not likely to drastically change the composition or authorization of the ITA. Thus, a policy and management agenda that serves conservative priorities is crucial. In a conservative administration, the ITA should operate with the following priorities: counter the malign influence of China and other U.S. adversaries, enforce agreements vigorously and defend against trade violations, secure access to critical supply chains and technologies, and enable the private sector to drive innovation and remain globally competitive. It is important to note that a deeply entrenched set of career senior executive service officials have managed the ITA for over a decade. While most are truly nonpartisan civil servants, some are not. Political leadership must manage accordingly. Strong political leadership is needed in ITA's policymaking positions from day one to ensure the Bureau is fully implementing administration policy. An incoming administration should ensure that Assistant Secretary and Deputy Assistant Secretary positions are staffed by appointees as quickly as possible. We're on page 700 of 922. Yay! Okay. And that's page, 667. 666 is a bad number. 667 of 667 of the Department of Commerce. Enforcement and compliance. Strong enforcement of trade agreements is an indispensable function of the ITA, carried out by enforcement and compliance, ENC. Free and fair trade is responsible without an energetic enforcement of existing agreements and without strong defense against dumping and illegal subsidies. Many free trade advocates consider anti-dumping and countervailing duty laws, AD/CVD, to be protectionist and thus anti-ethical to the conservative free market position. In their view, AD/CVD laws are overused abused by certain industries and harmful to American economic competitiveness by increasing costs to downstream industries. Other conservatives maintain that AD/CVD tariffs are not conventional tariffs, but rather corrective actions meant to address anti-free market activities by other governments. A scalpel, not a hammer. In the short term, this may mean higher costs for U.S. businesses and consumers on a limited number of products from certain offending countries. But those higher prices are correct existing price distortions in the marketplace and ultimately ensure the healthy operation of market forces in the long term and a level playing field for U.S. manufacturers. Whatever the case, improvements to the current system must be made to both protect U.S. consumers and companies from improperly applied duties and defend against trade distorting actions by other governments. Procedures governing the day to day administration of proceedings, as well as policies driving critical decisions and proceedings, require a fresh look. Ultimately, ENC's mandate is to conduct a rigorous but also fair, objective, and balanced review of the record in each proceeding and to make decision without bias. It is exceedingly unlikely that Congress would abolish or limit the activity of ENC. Therefore, the proposals below are made under the assumption that an incoming administration will operate ENC within its current legal, institutional, and political confines and set a path forward to wield ENC's considerable power to achieve the goals of a conservative administration. These proposals can be broken into three categories: process, policy, and addressing China. Process: reestablish and suspend in person pandemic related verifications, particularly regarding the People's Republic of China. Ensure that verifications are rigorous. Implement advanced analytics and artificial intelligence to identify opportunities for self initiation, detect circumvention, and prevent bad actors from gaming the system. Accelerate front end work on reviews as opposed to constantly pushing against statutory deadlines. Work with Customs and Border Protection (CBP) and other relevant agencies to address circumvention and duty evasion and promote policies that encourage full duty collection to ensure the integrity of AD/CVD and circumvention orders. Work with CBP, the Department of Justice, the Department of Treasury, and other relevant agencies to aggressively pursue importers of record and other beneficiaries for unpaid duties and consider policy changes to reduce uncollected duties in the future. Work pursuant to the above with interagency partners in AD/CVD cases to either require foreign importers of record IORs to make cash deposits far in excess of established duty rates at the time of entry of AD/CVD merchandise. Require IORs to register sufficient U.S. assets to ensure timely payment of duties or otherwise prohibit IORs from importing AD/CVD merchandise. Conduct a regulatory capture audit and put guardrails in place to address improper exercise of bureaucratic prerogative. Policy: ensure senior policy and decision-making positions are always held by political appointees. Reverse the practice of giving the benefit of the doubt to foreign companies versus U.S. companies in AD/CVD proceedings. Establish a policy for addressing companies that invest heavily in the U.S. and thus have large import volumes, exposing them to AD/CVD positions. Establish an effective, fair, and objective process for self-initiation of AD/CVD proceedings when industry lacks the resources or ability to act. Addressing China. Revive the China-specific non-market economy unit. Provide transparency in the surrogate country list development process. Develop a new methodology to determine normal values in Chinese anti-dumping cases because given China's size, economic might, and state intervention in the economy, there's no comparable surrogate country to use as a proxy for production costs. In addition to these changes, continued support for steel and aluminum market analysis and import monitoring remains crucial to the U.S. defense industrial base and the health of global manufacturing. Without these functions, it is difficult to address massive subsidization, overcapacity, and dumping by China. Industry and analysis. Industry and analysis consists of a team of economists and industry experts that provides important analysis to partners across the government, including the White House and USTR, as well as the public. As the Department of Commerce's Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States, CFIUS, lead, INA performs crucial work to ensure that the proper economic impact supply chain analysis is brought to national security risk assessments. This analysis is needed for CFIUS to be an effective tool in preventing China and other adversaries from exploiting the US's open investment climate. INA also provides impact assessments and economic modeling for policy options under administration consideration, plays a critical role in identifying trade barriers and providing industry specific expertise for USTR during free trade agreement, FTA negotiations, and does indispensable work ensuring cross border data flows, particularly with Europe, remain open and relatively unrestricted. However, outside of these functions, implementation of INA's mission as an intellectual engine for US trade and investment policy can often lack energy and focus. For instance, the top market reports that represent a large volume of INA work do not serve a specific strategic function and could be better replaced by industry competitiveness assessments in critical sectors of the economy. Strong and capable leadership is needed in INA to ensure administration priorities permeate the organization and that staff support administration support priorities. INA produces a mandatory report to Congress regarding the miscellaneous tariff bill, which focuses solely on U.S. capacity in the goods being considered for tariff exclusions and does not include highly relevant information on capacity among FTA partners and close allies. The resulting final report has thus been used to lobby for tariff reductions on thousands of imports from China without concern for any other factors. This lack of priority given to FTA partners is troubling. Going forward, INA should be permanently restructured to perform supply chain analysis on an ongoing basis for the United States government, identifying potential vulnerabilities like those exposed by the pandemic and resulting shortages in everything from semiconductors to baby formula. Furthermore, permanent standing teams should be established and staffed by properly aligned political appointees and trusted career staff to analyze and spur action on the following priority policy issues: strategic decoupling from China, defense industrial base strength, critical supply chains, for example, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, food, and emerging technologies, for example, rare earth minerals, semiconductors, batteries, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. Global markets in the US and foreign commercial service. For more than a decade, strategic planning at global markets, GM, and the US and foreign commercial service, CS, has been consistently undermined by increased costs associated with overseas staff and flat or reduced budgets. The Trump administration introduced crucial long overdue business practices, such as the implementation of software to manage and track workflow, but a further strategic overhaul of resource allocation is needed to set GM and the CS on a firm footing. Currently, CS manages staff spread over 106 domestic offices in 77 countries around the world. Abroad, several partner posts utilize interagency staff and regionally located CS officials to offer services across a permanent physical in-country CS presence. Given the rapidly rising costs imposed by the State Department on CS posts overseas, a drastic expansion of this model is likely needed. CS resources should be distributed according to the following set of priorities: value in countering the malign influence of adversaries, particularly China; value in fostering U.S. innovation; value in maintaining access to critical supply chains and technology; difficulty for U.S. companies in gaining market access without CS involvement; and potential untapped export market size and likelihood of expansion. Excuse me. Ultimately, difficult decisions must be made about the value of CS posts and whether individual posts can be justified given current resources and the above criteria. If the State Department deems the diplomatic value of a permanent in-country CS post to be vital to the national interest, then states should be more of the cost of maintaining that post. Global markets should also consolidate and elevate the advocacy center and select USA as relatively low cost tools to drive large scale export transactions and foreign direct investment, FDI. Select USA is a low cost and effective tool in attracting FDI to the US and to reshore manufacturing and research and development. In a world in which corruption is rampant, they are among the most effective tools in leveling the playing field for US communities and companies seeking to engage with governments and potential overseas investors. Given the value placed on senior level engagement by many governments and companies, this consolidated Office of Trade and Investment Advocacy should be headed by a Deputy Assistant Secretary. The new office should also seek congressional authorization to utilize its FDI promotion tools to encourage reshoring by US businesses. Bureau of Industry and Security. During the past 2 decades, technology transfer from America and its allies and has helped accelerate adversaries' technological and weapons capabilities. This technology transfer on a massive scale has occurred because of adversaries' exploitation of the US's open economy and education system through both commercial transactions and university and government research programs. Examples include the People's Republic of China's dramatic leaps towards forward in semiconductor design and fabrication, energy storage, nuclear weapons capabilities, artificial intelligence, space and aerospace engineering, and hypersonic weapons deployment. At the same time, the US has systematically failed to protect critical assets. Rather than, rather than promulgate policies to better prevent technology transfer, the US government has either ignored the problem or worse, from 2008 through 2016, instituted a government-wide export control reform process to loosen the Export Administration Regulations, EAR, governing exports of dual use items to facilitate technology transfer to adversaries, either directly or indirectly through third country transfers. Those reforms still present in the Department of Commerce's EAR must be reversed. The United States needs stronger rules to protect technology transfer to adversaries while promoting technology integration and interoperability with allies. Further, U.S. export control regulations should be utilized to prevent theft of personally identifiable information and to encourage U.S. companies to shift production out of China and further diversify their supply chains to better advance U.S. national security interests. For all the below recommendations, BIS needs to move unilaterally while it works with allies to implement complementary export control policies. Waiting to act until allies are ready to move in lockstep is not an option while America's national security is at risk. Emerging and foundational technologies. The Export Control Reform Act of 2018, ECRA, gave BIS permanent statutory authority to regulate exports of dual use items, goods, software, and technology. ECRA also mandated that BIS regulate exports of emerging and foundational technologies. Although the scope of such technologies is vast, to date, BIS has only controlled just over 40 of these technologies. This does not meet the clear statutory intent of Congress that ECRA be leveraged to ensure that the United States maintains a technological advantage in technologies bearing upon national security interests. Currently, BIS self-identifies technologies that merit control under that merit, excuse me, I lost my point. Lost my train of, I lost my place. See, trying to multitask. Okay, we're going to start here. Then, on a quarterly basis, BIS should make public such recommendations while holding the identity of the submitter confidential for public input, followed by an explanation about its ultimate decision to control or not control the items, its reasons, the level of controls applied, stringent or permissive, and the relevant export control classification number, ECCN. Under the Commerce Control List, Commerce should also institute a mechanism whereby its decisions can be challenged, including on a confidential basis. Licensing procedures, adjudication, and transparency. Currently, if the Departments of Defense, State Commerce, Currently, if the Departments of Defense, State Commerce, and Energy disagree on an export license decision, the disagreement may be escalated to the Operating Committee and subsequently to the Advisory Committee on Export Policy led by BIS's Assistant Secretary for Export Administration. The Assistant Secretary does not need to lead the dispute resolution, and this process should be revised by giving lead authority to BIS's Undersecretary, who is better able to account for diverging views. Moreover, BIS's authority to overrule other agency votes should be changed. Each agency should have one equal vote, and if a licensing dispute remains unresolved, the final decision should be elevated to the National Security Advisor and the Secretaries of Defense, State, Commerce, and Energy. Additionally, to improve congressional oversight of BIS's license adjudication process, BIS should provide specific congressional committees with data from the automated export system on a quarterly basis. Electronic files should contain U.S. exporter by name, product description, for example, harmonized system code and ECCN/U.S. munitions list designation, and end user and designation country, and when a license was required, whether the license was granted or denied. BIS currently denies just 1.2% of export licenses. These data reporting requirements can help Congress better determine whether BIS is adequately protecting national security through appropriate use of export controls or whether additional direction from Congress is required. Improve end-use checks. The integrity of the export control system may be validated only through adequate end-use checks. BIS must deny export licenses to countries that do not permit adequate end-use checks, for example, China and Russia. By U.S. authorities, BIS should also strengthen the forensic audit capabilities of its export enforcement officers through improved and frequent training so they are able to detect export control violations. EAR revisions. The U.S. government needs a new export control modernization effort to tighten the EAR policies governing licenses to countries of concern, including China and Russia, specifically revise and/or reverse the 2008 through 2016 policies. When When authoritarian governments explain what they plan to do, believe them unless hard evidence demonstrates otherwise. Case in point, China's and Russia's stated civil military fusion policies demand central government command and control style systems in which every single private entity serves the interests of the state and is forced to provide technology, services, capacity, and data to the central government and the military. Through this structure, commercial activities are routinely weaponized by authoritarian regimes that repeatedly identify the U.S. as an enemy. Accordingly, U.S. export control policies must be updated to reflect these realities and the associated threats to national security. Key priorities for EAR modernization for countries of concern should be eliminating the special designed licensing loophole, redesignating China and Russia to more highly prohibitive export licensing groups, country groups D or E, eliminating license exceptions, broadening foreign direct product rules, reducing the de minimis threshold from 25% to 10% or 0% for critical technologies, tightening the deemed export rules to prevent technology transfer to foreign nationals from countries of concern, tightening the definition of fundamental research to address exploitation of the open U.S. university system by authoritarian governments through funding students and researchers and recruitment, eliminating license exceptions for sharing technology with controlled entities, countries through standard setting activities and bodies, and improving regulations regarding published information for technology transfers. Okay, we're on page 673 of the download, 706 out of 922. Yay, look at us making progress. Okay, we're going to take a brief break. I got to take care of my 11 o'clock obligation. Make sure it's safety first. So you are currently watching the reading of the Project 2025. We're currently on part 14. And so if you go to at Adriane Mayes YouTube channel and at Adriane Mayes, you're able to click on the live tab. You're able to find parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and of course 14. And so every day I'm on the billionaire journey, building billionaire plans. And so in regards to that, we're on day 64, finding journey. So I'm going to let you watch that while I take care of this obligation.
This AI tool will take your idea and create a complete book, complete with design, images.
I put this person here, whatever title you want to give me. Humility is not thinking less of oneself than I ought. Adriane Mayes, day 64 of the billionaire journey. Make me an instrument. I played the clarinet, and God gave me that opportunity to be teachable, and I am an instrument. Today, we're going to focus on the profound virtue of humility and being humble and being an instrument of peace and service. And Adriane Mayes, AI genius, knows that God put this person here, whatever title you want to give me. Humility is not thinking less of oneself than I ought to rather acknowledge the things I do well and accept compliments graciously. True humility, it comes from recognizing that God is the doer, not me. Adriane Mayes is just a vessel of what the plans he needs to be done. Therefore, any accomplishments that are done, they're not mine. They're not mine alone, but they are achieved through God's will. I am thankful for daily practice, consistency, and making sure the mindset. To have a billionaire mindset, you have to be humbly ask God to remove all your shortcomings so that you can move freely amongst his plan and go about your business of love and service. Embrace the mindset that humility is thinking of ourselves less and not thinking less of ourselves. It's a difference. Acknowledge that human flaws and strive to improve without self-criticism. When we're reading this Project 2025, mandate for leadership, you have a mandate on your thought process. If you think about the anyway clause, life is full of challenges and misunderstandings, but the true test of character is how we respond to those challenges. Follow the simple principles inspired by the famous Anyway poem. Forgive. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. Be kind. Kindness may be misinterpreted as selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. Succeed. Success attracts false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. Be honest. Honestly may lead to being cheated, but be honest and frank anyway. Build. What you spend years building, it may be destroyed overnight, but build anyway. Be happy. Finding serenity and happiness can evoke jealousy. Be happy anyway. Do well. Do good. The good you do today might be forgotten tomorrow, but do good anyway. Give your best. The best you may offer may never seem like enough. Give your best anyway. In the end, remember your actions are the outcomes of your consistency, and it's really not between you, it's between you and your God. It has never been about you, honestly. It's the perceptions, the reactions, and if you're humble enough to listen to the teachings. When you reflect on how you can embody humility in your daily life, think about the areas where you can apply the principles of the Anyway poem. Literally pause, ponder, pray, and proceed. Use the 4 P's to commit to being an instrument of peace, letting God work through you. So, action steps. Daily, have billionaire mindset. Start your day with affirmations. Start out with a prayer, thanking God to be exactly where you are today and asking Him to remove your shortcomings. When you do your affirmations daily, remind yourself that humility is thinking of yourself less and recognizing that God's role in your life, He's already got it taken care of. And then apply. You have to do the work. Anyway, principles. Throughout the day, consciously apply the principles of kindness, random acts of kindness, forgiveness, and perseverance, regardless of others' reactions. So embrace humility in the mindset of being a channel of God's peace and work. And by doing so, you align your actions with a higher purpose, with God's purpose. Adriane Mayes, AI genius, making a meaningful impact on the world around you. Stay teachable, be an instrument. I can, I will, I must. Let's go. And remember, it works if you work. It works if you work it. Let's go. Dope. Detroit, one product, educate. Let's go.
Let's go. Detroit, one product, educate. Welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed the brief break there. We're reading the Project 2025 Random Acts of Kindness. Make sure you join the community and leave your thoughts here in regards to if you're learning something, how you would share this information with someone else. So in our community, we're building a Random Acts of Kindness community. Not for everybody, I get it. But it is for those that are action takers, want to build billionaire brands, and all want to grow together. So if you're learning something and want to spread education with someone, drop in how you're actually implementing and helping someone else with the Project 2025. And understand mandate for leadership, just the education of it. Like, in regards to, for example, this random acts of kindness that I'm doing, I'm doing it for the purpose that, some people cannot read this document. So this conservative promise being 922 pages may be a little bit intimidating, but again, we're on page 706. So what the whole Random Acts of Kindness was to literally provide a way to have people listen to the information before making a decision. It's so much social media out there in regards to what you should do, what you shouldn't do. This is good. This is bad. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, don't vote. Do vote. Vote. If anything, if you don't vote, what's 50% of nothing? Nothing. So if you don't vote and put forth the action, you're not going to get anything. But at least put yourself in the game for a 50-50 chance. But even within that, you want to have the education to make a knowledgeable vote. So make the vote that's best for you, regardless of what naysayers anyone else says, but listen first. That's the first step, is to listen. So we are on page, I didn't do my percentage for today. So I got to do that part for, special shout out to Tim from Clitzy AI. He's amazing. Oh gosh, he's a great guy. So the CEO of Clitzy AI is amazing. Anyway, so the key part of doing the percentage, we're on 706 out of 922. And so with that, Oh my gosh, guys, we're over 75% done. We're 76.57% done. So let's keep going. Okay. Oh gosh. Okay. Dang. You ready right now? Sorry about that. Okay. 706 out of 922. Sorry about that brief delay. Or 707 out of 922. Give you one quick second. Sorry about this. In fact, let me just do this instead of having you all sit here and look at me answer call. So what I'll do is I'm going to take a break here and then I'll be back at part 15. So when you do things, that's why I wanted to get this done over the weekend. Now I have my Being the Change work, my CC Because We Care work, my Random Acts of Kindness work, my okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and let me get another hour in. Okay, we're gonna go a little hour. We'll call them back. Okay. The next few years will prove or disprove the assertion that the U.S. stands on the precipice of a Cold War with China. I don't know what to do. Nah, let me just go ahead and end now because if not, and then that way I'll come back to you live. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and end now. Go ahead and make a couple of phone calls and then come back. We got it. We're on page 707 of 922. We're 76% of the way done. We got almost an hour and a half out the way this morning. So we'll come back this afternoon. Let me take care of some business. Got to get the wealth creation money rolling, right? Got to follow up and make calls. So anyway, I'll follow back up with you guys shortly. So I want to get this knocked out, hopefully, prayerfully today. But we have 215 pages to go. Look at me doing math. You see that Renaissance education still work? Murray State University, all of those schools. You want me to drop one? Thank you. All of it. Detroit Ludington, Cook Elementary, Renaissance High School, Detroit US Open, St. Robert Bellarmine in Redford, Michigan. So again, the billionaire mindset, it starts within the process. So again, please check out the other sections, other parts 1 through 13, now 14. Hopefully you enjoyed this reading. And those that haven't, it's okay as well. It wasn't for you. And that's okay because everything is not for everybody. Understood. Just keep scrolling past me and that's okay. And even if you don't want to leave a comment, please do. Leave an amazing comment if you think this is helpful, insightful, not insightful, and drop it in and just consider leaving one in the community. So that's the next part of our building. But right now, getting through this one thing at a time. That's what God keeps saying. I can, I will, I must. Adriane Mayes, AI genius, your captain of the Detroit ChatGPT revolution and your president of CCC Because We Care Foundation. 15 years in the community. Oh, such a blessing. Thank you so much for all of the sponsors and support over the years. But thank you for today as well. Thank you so much. And we'll move forward soon. I can, I will, I must. Let's go. Be back at you here shortly this afternoon. See you soon.